Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Friday night and welcome to Plank of the Week right here on TalkTV. I'm Mike Graham and we have got a great panoply of people to talk about tonight, and maybe the odd organisation as well, because it is time, of course, for the Plank of the Week. I've got a fantastic panel joining me tonight. Peter Blexley is here, Alex Phillips is back, Russell Quirk is also back. You were in San Francisco, weren't you? Which we might talk about. Candice Holdworth is here as well. And we've got a fantastic array of planks to talk about. And here's what they're after. It is, of course, the trophy that everybody wants, Plank of the Week. Let's kick things off straight away. Peter Blexley, you know a thing or two about fighting crime. Who have you got for us?
Do you remember when Extinction Rebellion were just an irritating bunch of losers who used to obstruct the traffic and park boats on Oxford Circus?
Isn't that what they still are?
Well, they've now decided that they are the arbiters of everything that people will say and everything that people must think.
Oh, of course.
Because they've started interrupting political speeches.
Oh, right, OK. What have you got for us here? Let's have a look.
Excuse me, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you all look very nice people, and I'm sure you are fantastically nice people, but I would like to draw your attention to a few characteristics of fascism.
We believe in freedom of speech, so he can have his National Loonies Conference next week, and he can see how many people he gets to come along.
This was Jacob Rees-Mogg at the Conservative sort of conference that was organised outside the Conservative Party. But it's a very bizarre scene, that, isn't it? The guy looks like he should be sitting in an office somewhere. He doesn't look like your normal sort of swampy type, does he?
Well, you see, I bemoaned the loss of post offices because he would have been down there collecting his pension, that old fella.
He would have been, yeah.
But
instead he's been sort of,
But he was incredibly polite.
Yes.
Wasn't he? It's like the most polite protest I think I've ever seen.
You're being really nice, but you're fascist.
Excuse me, can I just talk about fascism?
Well, it looked like Jacob Rees-Mogg thought he was going to announce that there was a fire drill or something. You know, that he was going to leave the building, you know, because he looks quite official. He's got a jacket on, you know, sort of dressed by what used to be that shop Simpsons of Piccadilly, it seemed to be, which used to be a shop of Piccadilly, but I don't think it's there anymore. But yeah, they have become sort of all-encompassing now. It's not just about saving the planet anymore, right?
No, they've gone way, way, way beyond that. I wonder where they're going to pop up next and who they're going to interrupt next.
Well, I can help you with that because they interrupted Suella Braverman as well. We got that.
We welcome you unless you come on a boat.
Anyone else? It's audition day for the Shadow Cabinet.
He's very fat for a vegan, that guy. I don't think he's on the plant diet, to be honest.
No, I think they were pulling him off over towards Weight Watchers, I think. But that was a great line, wasn't it, from Suella Braverman?
I thought she did well.
A very, very sharp, very quick response from her, I thought.
And, of course, Extinction Rebellion vowed, what was it, just a few months ago, they weren't going to do any more disruptive activity. And then they worked out that actually that didn't work very well because nobody paid any attention to them.
Well, clearly that fella ate a few pies when he was thinking about what they were going to do next.
Exactly right. But now we've got Just Stop Oil messing about all over the place, getting onto roads. Now they've worked out that legally they can walk in front of cars very slowly, and apparently it's not an offence according to the police anyway. I don't know what's left for these people, because all they ever say is, well, we're just trying to raise awareness. I mean, what were they trying to raise awareness of there? Fascism?
Well, so it would appear, yes. So what next for them? I wonder if they're going to pop up and interrupt, perhaps, places of worship, for example. You know, if they take it upon themselves to then start lecturing us about, is there a higher authority or not?
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't give them too many ideas, but it does appear that they're trying to change tactics and rather than just being disruptive and actually also not being seen to be favoured by the public, I guess. I think that's their problem.
Right.
They're trying to make this point, which of course they haven't made because nothing's changed, nothing's happened as a consequence of their protests for months and months and months. Maybe this is a new approach, but it's not going to work, is it? Because walking onto a stage and saying, excuse me, please, and being all very nice and being carted off inevitably 30 seconds later. I mean, he didn't say anything. None of them said anything about the climate or, you know, polar bears melting or anything, did they?
Yeah, they unite people against them. They don't get people talking about what they want to talk about. Everyone just comes together to say, no, thank you.
Exactly. We've definitely lost the audience. Alex, who's your first plank of the week?
Well, it has to be, doesn't it? It's got to be that former spin doctor at number 10 Downing Street, Mr. ALASTAIR Campbell. I had the fortune of being interviewed with him on Newsnight, and boy, wasn't that fun.
No, it wasn't. Let's have a look at the first bit of it.
Excuse me, that's just unnecessarily rude.
But it's true.
You should be so
I'm sorry.
arrogant. You haven't actually let me talk, so if you would let me talk, perhaps you might agree with me.
Well, let her finish, and then I will come back to you.
Because I don't think you're, particularly being a good contributor right now, because you're just being essentially rude.
Don't make the point.
Now,
don't talk rubbish. It turns out you weren't talking rubbish, because I saw that you retweeted later the things that he was arguing about.
What was so hilarious, he was trying to say in that argument that the UK didn't have to enforce any EU regulations.
Right.
I mean, for a man who seems to love the EU so much, he doesn't understand how it works.
Right.
I mean, this idea that we could have just said, oh, do you know what, those regulations? Not for us, we're not going to do that.
But
there would have been no debate.
There would have been no Brexit if that had been the case.
But people forget that ALASTAIR Campbell was always a spin doctor, and that's what he does.
He was the original.
And after I watched that clip from Newsnight that you were on, I said, when people were going, ALASTAIR Campbell's telling the truth. I'm like, ALASTAIR Campbell doesn't know what the truth is. He manipulates the truth. That's his job.
Increasingly, the tactic I find of Remainers is to essentially just shout lies, 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 call everything a lie, and then flagrantly lie.
Yeah.
When you're there trying to actually make valid points, because you know what you're talking about. You're not there to call other people liars, or you're there to have a debate and argue your side. And they just go like, oh, you talk nonsense, you're this, you're that, it's lies, you don't. And every time they talk about that bus, don't they? That money for the NHS. That has literally nothing to do with me.
Right.
You've got a problem with that bus, speak to Dominic Cummings.
Speak
I
to
wouldn't
the
have put
bus
it.
driver,
Right.
But also they have this visceral hatred for anybody who disagrees with them. Let's have a look at the other bit of the show.
and it's very rich, a man who essentially was part of telling lies to invade a country, to accuse me of dishonesty.
I think you might have lost the argument there, my dear. If I may patronise you even more. Honestly.
No, that's it now.
Yes, I will.
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
it. No, that's it.
No,
That's
sorry.
it.
You bring these people on, you never challenge them. You let them talk utter rubbish about Brexit. And it's happened on the BBC for year after year after year.
OK. I am not going to take that from you.
Well, it all got a bit tasty, didn't it?
I loved Victoria Derbyshire.
The thing about him is, one, he patronised you by calling you dear. Now, if any Tory had said that to anybody on the left, they'd never have heard the end of it, right? He specialises in sort of finger-pointing, and he's quite physically aggressive as well. He's quite a big guy, you know. I've had my run-ins with him in the past as well. But basically, you know, you've lost the argument, according to him, by telling him the truth.
Yeah,
which is that he actually got involved in a government policy to invade a country which resulted in 1 million people dying and actually messing up the entire Middle East.
Based on falsehood.
Great job, ALASTAIR.
Based on falsehood.
Yeah, based on a load of old cobblers, which was either sexed up somewhere in the United Nations or somewhere in the United States or somewhere inside Downing Street.
Yeah.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't
One thing
him.
I don't get, if he's supposed to be a communications expert, you know, I thought he'd wake up the next morning and think, oof, that's not going to work out well for me. He's just doubled down. He sort of went sorry to Victoria Derbyshire and then started going on at me, oh, you're just playing the misogyny card. I'm like, I think you'll find you called me my dear and said, I'm going to patronise you
Playing the
some more.
misogyny card by calling out somebody who was a misogynist.
Well, he reinforced the fact that he was indeed patronising you, which some would say is borderline misogynistic, by then saying, I'm going to patronise you.
So what happened at the end? Did you guys get up and go your separate ways?
No, do you know what? The clip doesn't show what happened because essentially we were stuck next to each other because Victoria was then doing the link into the next segment. And he starts huffing and puffing. Oh, God's sake. He leans right across me and he's about 3 times my size, blocks me with his arm. And you see that just before the camera pans back round. But he's there like, pulling out his microphone, his hand flailing in front of my face. And I actually am sort of shaking.
Right.
I'm sort of thinking, oh my God, is he actually going to assault me? And that might sound radical, but I.
But he does have
that.
He does have this kind of deranged look in his eye, doesn't he?
And I was just like,
but he looks completely and utterly unhinged. I mean, he's clearly, borderline, if not totally, got some mental health issues.
Well, he says he has. Really? He talks about it himself. I mean, Douglas Murray tweeted after that clip was released onto Twitter, you know, that when everybody knows that ALASTAIR Campbell has got mental health issues, but he's the only one that's allowed to talk about it. Nobody else is allowed to mention it. He can mention it. He can write about his own depression. But, I mean, he shouldn't be going on TV, and quite frankly, they shouldn't be getting him on as a guest if they think that's how he's going to behave.
What's so remarkable as well is the amount of people who have sort of sent me private messages saying, I've experienced him and he's really not nice and he is a bully and da-da-da and da-da. Even, and I don't want to name names, people who, you know, are still interviewing him today. And I think if everybody knows that he is aggressive, he is a bully, that he doesn't play fair in interviews, that he tells porcupines, that he's physically intimidating, why keep giving him a platform? Because I'm pretty sure actually, if he was a right-winger...
If he was a right-winger, it wouldn't happen.
Allowed.
But also, this other myth
happen.
that the BBC somehow is Tory, run by Tories, also another myth perpetuated by the RAYNER brigade, who are obsessed with the fact that the BBC somehow managed to let Brexit happen because they helped everybody do it.
My mum raised me by saying, manners maketh man. I rest my case.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. He once walked up to me when I was in the tent of Common Sense down on College Green, and I was actually broadcasting. You know, I had headphones on, and he came right behind my ear. And I mean, I don't really care because I'm big enough and ugly enough to deal with it. But he just shouted in my ear, "Graham, stop talking bollocks," right? Which is not really what you expect from a government spin doctor prior to whatever it is he's doing now. You know, he was a member of the government. He was a very important member of the government, and he left the government because the story became about him. If you remember back in the day when he was telling
I think, though, that his behaviour towards you, I think, characterises now the left when it comes to arguing about whether it's Brexit, trans, whatever agenda they have to argue on. Whether it's social media, whether it's media, whether it's face-to-face, as you experience. To me now, I see more and more the left getting very, very animated, very aggressive. Shouty, not wanting to have an argument, just to shout at you as much as they can so that they stop you talking, so that they therefore believe that they've won the argument.
Yeah.
But they also do this thing, which I really hate, which is downwind of making themselves look like absolute wallies, like he did. And I was very, very careful to avoid a swear word there, because I had a C word I'd rather use.
Would have been justified.
But, you know, what they do is they then whip up, they deliberately find something. He must have been up on, like, you know, bloodshot eyes trawling my name, because he whipped up anything he could to feed to that hashtag FDPE crowd. And I think I was trending on Twitter all weekend. I mean, I didn't keep my phone on. I was just like, But I hate the fact they feel that they can sort of pack together, congregate in numbers,
and just all retweet millions and millions of views, and it just keeps going.
Nasty, and it's usually a load of BS, nothing true in it.
But the intention behind it is not a nice one.
No, it's attacking an individual.
You know, it's attacking an individual, encouraging people to pile in, so you wake up every morning thinking, oh my God, am I really this horrible person?
And I'm going to quit, I can't cope with this anymore, I'm not going to step away.
And that is a directive, I'm sure, coming from somewhere. I don't know where. But let's talk about the BBC, Russell. Who's your nominee?
Well, it is indeed the BBC, a regular. Yeah, thanks for that. It has to be. It's almost every week. A regular candidate on this show, but I'm afraid, look, for good reason. And I think particularly this week, where we saw that on the anniversary of the Dam Busters raid, so May the 16th, 1943. There you go. It's going to bring tears to your eyes. This. 19 Lancaster bombers took off to go and perform the Dam Buster raid. So 133 men, 53 didn't come back. So this is in the midst of the Second World War. Inarguably, the bravery and the kind of majesty of those men doing what they did, as brave as it was a pivotal part of the war in terms of changing it in our favour, fighting fascism and so on. So yesterday, the BBC, to so-called commemorate this particular anniversary, decide to refer to the Dam Busters raid as the infamous Dam Busters raid. Now, anyone that knows anything about the English language knows that the word infamous ain't a good thing. No. So infamous basically means anything that is bad and that might do damage.
Well, famous literally for being something terrible, right?
Yes.
Let's have a look at Sally Nugent and what she thinks she's doing.
18 Lancaster bombers took part in the infamous Dam Buster raids. Tonight, a special anniversary flypast will take place over Lincolnshire to mark the occasion.
And after that, they're going to do a documentary on the infamous crowning of King Charles. Kind of going, who's writing this rubbish?
But Mike, I think the serious point, this is really disrespectful to those veterans. You know, any veteran, actually. You know, the Second World War certainly wasn't our fault. We got involved because we had to. It was about fighting for freedom and fighting against fascism, as I've said. The fact that now this organisation that we fund, don't forget, that's supposed to be unbiased, should say not once but actually twice, because they also refer to the infamous Dam Busters raid later on the One show.
Yeah. So almost as though infamous is in fact the way to describe the Dam Busters.
But it means that it's certainly not a mistake. I mean, it wasn't the presenter's fault, in fairness. This is scripted. This is someone at the, well, no, but this is someone at the BBC having obviously written.
If you're sitting in front of a TV screen broadcasting to a lot of people, there's an individual responsibility upon you.
No, but even if
you're reading from a teleprompter to know when language is unsuitable. And let's face it, the BBC has got translation departments. It's got
Also, we all read-
pronunciation departments.
Yeah.
You'd think they could get the basic English
We
right.
all read from time to time from auto cues, not on this show, by the way. But if you saw something in auto cue that was either grammatically wrong or was the wrong word, which does happen.
No, I'm sure, but I'm not sure anyone at the BBC has the guts, frankly, to go against the grain. Yeah, if it's scripted, they've said it. So look, that's why I think it's not Sally Nugent, to me, that's the plank. It is the BBC.
Well, but if I'd been her, she should have said, don't you think, that she should have said, Candice, no, I'm not saying infamous. Because they'll sit in the little bit before. I know they don't really have breaks, but they have plenty of opportunities to look at what they're about to say.
Yes. Yeah, well, it may be. I mean, that's just the received wisdom. I mean, I remember when Margaret Thatcher died a few years ago, and they always used the word divisive.
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on, she won successive elections.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a highly successful politician. I don't think you can use that word to
describe
describe
it. Well, you can argue that she was divisive, but you don't use it as the overarching word to say, oh, yes, the divisive Margaret Thatcher.
But then this is what all the podcasters, and all the podcasters, not this podcaster.
Thank God.
But mainstream, not this isn't a mainstream, my gosh. No, but a lot of broadcasters set up these panels around coronation to debate whether we should abolish the monarchy. I'm like, can we just have the coronation? And then if enough people seem to be rattled about the fact we've still got a monarchy and, you know, want to debate it afterwards, fine. But you shouldn't have people sitting around before the crown goes on the man's head being like, oh, aren't they evil? They're all white.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. I mean, last week's winner, you know, the woman from Bridgerton, who said, you know, and it wasn't so much what she said, but it was the reaction of everybody else. You know, there was sort of nervous laughter from the other panellists on ITV when she said the balcony looked terribly white at the royal family's coronation.
And talking of reactions, it won't surprise anybody to learn that those on the left, as a consequence of what the BBC said not once, but twice yesterday, have come out and said, well, it's just a word. It was a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Infamous, famous, it's the same thing, isn't it? No, it isn't. It is not.
Imagine if you'd said, let's have a look back at the infamous Barack Obama years in the White House, right?
Yes.
How do you think that would have gone?
Although I do think standards of grammar have dramatically declined. I think a lot of people. I do think a lot of people like they'll be Googling the meaning of the word.
I blame the wokists because the wokists have kind of redefined the language, haven't they? They've told you that certain words don't mean what they used to mean, and now they mean other things. So maybe that's their fault. Candice, who's your first nominee?
So my first nominee is Angela Rayner.
Angela Rayner?
Yes, a fellow redhead, so I do feel a little bit treacherous, betraying my own kind here.
That's okay, it's allowed.
But I'm not a fan of this policy she's putting forward about banning employers not being able to email employees after workplace hours.
Yes.
Which I think will just be an absolute death knell for startups. It'll be terrible for companies that operate in lots of different time zones. And it just, to me, shows that they have absolutely no experience running businesses.
No.
None whatsoever. And always viewing the employer as suspect and the employee as a victim.
Yes.
And the employee can never play any role in, say, negotiating an employment contract, salary negotiations. They always have to have the government come in and manage it for them.
It's like it's insulting the intelligence of those employees.
Yes,
isn't it?
it really is.
And what's it going to do with the government anyway?
Exactly. Plenty of people opt into those sorts of jobs. They're like, it's fine, it's going to be super stressful, I'm going to work really, really hard.
I think they did this in France, and it kind of the consequence was that the streets of Paris are now on fire perpetually. So it's not gone very well.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to send an email after 5 p.m. or something.
That's right.
You know, especially not on a Monday. It doesn't work on a Monday. But this is the other thing. I mean, you remember Dominic Raab, and he was pushed out of his job because one of the things that he did to bully the staff was to ring somebody once to tell them that he didn't think they'd done a very good job. And you go, sorry? I mean, they've obviously never worked in a proper organisation where if you do something wrong, you get told you've done it wrong.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I had friends who went into law. And I mean, they would sleep with their phone on their pillow because they'd have, say, the office in New York that would call them all kinds of hours. They'd answer the call, but they did that. That was part of the deal,
but
right?
Didn't they know that before they went into that profession?
100%.
They did.
Yeah,
and also you get paid pretty well,
yes.
I'm afraid, for doing that and to be available 24/7 because sometimes you need to be available 24/7. You need to make a decision. But luckily, one of the things that I was rather happy about this week was that Angela Rayner was up against Oliver Dowden at Prime Minister's Questions because Rishi Sunak was away in Hiroshima. God knows why he went there. But anyway, she was described by Oliver Dowden, who I didn't realise was quite so funny, as being with Keir Starmer like the Holly and Phil of the Labour Party. But let's have a look at her now. I actually think that's quite endearing.
Is that Austin Powers Drag Week or something?
I think it was some kind of Mancunian thing where they were all going out and sort of she decided she wanted to do a set
No, it wasn't. That was filmed in my kitchen.
There you go.
I think it
As
looks
I
like
think
my
the young people
it
call
looks
it.
like
She
my
did it.
embarrassing drunk aunt at a wedding. I think it's absolutely.
I think it makes
terrible.
her seem a bit more human. I'm all for
Really?
politicians looking a bit more human.
Well, don't know what humans you like hanging around with.
Well, I
Michael.
mean, doing things that normal people do. I mean, I'm a bit old for that sort of case. But, you know.
Russell, you're a father of 3. You need to do more dad dancing, right?
Yeah.
It's
Like
a
that.
whole part. Be
Take
embarrassing.
a leaf out of Angela Rayner's book.
Go and get yourself a
Angela
stage
Rayner.
at a festival and go and do a set. You know, Russell's working set you could do. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking about journalists. We're going to be talking about the Archbishop of Wokebury as well. He didn't make it onto the set last week, but he's going to make it this week. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to tonight's edition of Plank of the Week here on TalkTV. We've got plenty of planks to get through, but I don't know, we might have already found a winner. I'm not going to give away too much, we'll find out at the end. But this is my first nomination, and I'm going to go back to a few days ago, actually, because this is, of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury, otherwise known as Justin Wokeby, in my world, anyway. This is a guy who continually kind of pipes up about all manner of political things that he probably shouldn't get his nose stuck into. Last week he got involved in the House of Lords debate on migrants and decided to say to everybody that basically it was morally unacceptable to send people to Rwanda, even though the United Nations has already sent plenty of people to Rwanda and various other countries have also deported people to Rwanda. But he's not actually nominated for that. He's nominated instead for not knowing that there's a speed limit on the Albert embankment, because apparently he was done for doing 25 and a 20. And I know exactly where the camera is. If you know, that's the north side of the River Thames, basically, as you go from sort of Vauxhall to Chelsea. And he got done by this 20-mile-an-hour speed camera, which I used to drive past on a regular basis. And it struck me, how can you be God's representative in Britain, basically, as the Church of England's boss, and not know that you can't drive over the speed limit? And if you do, how can you not get off it?
But wasn't it worse than that? So
It
apart
was.
from the moral imperative in terms of
I would say it's morally unacceptable.
adhering to a speed limit, but also didn't he, it is alleged, then ignore the court correspondence?
Yes.
It meant he had to go to court.
He did.
And apparently he ignored, whatever word you want to use, 3 instances where the court tried to contact him and he just ignored it.
Right. Well, maybe Lambeth Palace is so big that he couldn't find where the post was
Literally
being
lost in
delivered
the
to. Literally lost in the post. Yeah, he had to pay a £500 fine, which was commensurate with apparently his income, which is obviously quite high. And he got 3 points on his licence as
So do
well.
you think the collection box that week was perhaps a little bit heavy than
It may well have been.
Isn't the answer to this? Because he loves piping up about climate change, of course, because it's on the sort of woke drop-down menu of things you have to believe in. Surely the answer is he gets some sort of like speed-limited Pope-mobile.
Yes.
You know, one of those electric
somebody
golf
did
cart
say to me,
things.
was he actually in a Pope-mobile? I don't know what he was in. I'm assuming he would have been an electric car, but he's obviously be morally unacceptable to be in a petrol car. Because he did used to work for BP, didn't he? The oil company.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But why wasn't he...
That's moral.
But why wasn't he walking or on the bus? Because train links from
Why wasn't he
Canterbury-
walking on the water, was I thought?
Train links from Canterbury going to Waterloo, and Lambeth Palace is well served by a frequent bus journey from Waterloo, and it's also a rather pleasant 20-minute walk.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's always possible that he had to go in a car because he didn't want to be assailed by all of his fans as he came out, you know, absolutely mobbing him and asking for his autograph. Because he does see himself, I think, as a bit of a colourful character and then the sort of nation's conscience. So I think, I mean, I'm only joking, of course, here when I say it, but really, at the end of the day, it's not a great example to set to your flock. To get done for breaking the law. Somebody also said to me, by the way, and I know, again, this is tongue-in-cheek, should he have been able to crown the king knowing that he had this terrible crime hanging over his head? You know, I mean, he's literally putting the crown on the next king's head.
Well, when similar
knowing that he's got this
circumstances-
court action going on.
Yeah, when similar circumstances kind of befell politicians, you know, over Partygate and so on.
Yeah.
All and sundry came out and said, well, now you're a criminal, you know, you can't you
Yeah.
can't now serve under any authority,
Yeah.
and maybe the same...
Lucky he
apply
didn't
to him.
pass the points on to the Archbishop of York, you know, who may or may not have been in the car with him. I don't know whether he was, by the way, before anybody starts having to go. Right, Peter Blexley coming next. What have you got?
Well, it's the prison service.
Of course.
Or it's probably the policy makers
Yes.
sitting at the top of the prison service, because they have decreed that the word convict is now a no-no, and describing a former prisoner as an ex-con...
There's the guys from Porridge.
is a
That's
no-no.
one for the teenagers, that.
Yep. Yeah, you can't use that language. What you should say is they are people with lived experience.
You see, this is what I was saying earlier about the wokists changing the meaning of everything, because people with lived experience is basically anyone who's alive, isn't it?
Everyone.
All of us, isn't it?
Everyone.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you're a convict when you've been to prison, does it?
No.
Well, not everybody with a lived experience has murdered and raped people.
How can you have a
Well, to be fair, not everybody's in prison has done that either.
experience?
Yeah. I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it? And what's wrong with being called a convict?
Or an ex-con.
Right.
Or an ex-con.
And actually,
Ex-con's banned as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
In rehabilitation, a big part of the process of rehabilitation is owning up to and accepting accountability for the crime you've committed.
Right.
That is a process prisoners have to go through.
Right.
Yep.
And sort of just go, oh, well, I didn't commit a crime, I was just, living an experience. I mean, what?
Yeah.
It's just
Also, isn't
mad.
the most ridiculous thing about this is that the reason they don't want you to use this language is because it might be offensive to offenders.
Well, we mustn't offend anybody.
No.
Who have offended.
No, I think it's OK if you offend offenders, isn't it?
Yes.
Well,
there
they
used to
might
be a
be
thing called
offended.
outlaws. You remember
Yeah.
that if you committed a crime, you were therefore outside the law, and therefore, I would never advocate that they should not have any rights at all. But they shouldn't have everybody's rights.
Well-
I mean, next will be what, voting in prison and
Well,
whatever else.
occasionally they try for that, don't they? I mean, here's the thing. In the old days of outlaws, the bad guys wore the masks. Now it's good if you wear a mask. Now you get extra brownie points for wearing a mask.
Yeah,
You walk
it's
into a bank
advised.
wearing a mask. Oh, that's good. It used to be they'd have somebody would jump on you and pin you to the floor.
Yeah, like the flying squad.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. Coming up, Alex Phillips with your next one.
Oh, it's one of my old
Oh,
favourite...
I've got a clip to show you before we do that. Sorry, I apologise. Before we do that, this is from Australia. That's why I'd forgotten about it. But it's about prisoners. Have a look at this.
These are some of the faces of New South Wales inmates rapping, joking and making TikTok videos from inside prison. Cons are embracing social media within the state system, using illegally obtained phones to share their lives inside jail. Another former inmate who goes by his rap name Snowy Badman used a contraband mobile to make rap videos and even recorded an album from inside his cell at Goulburn Jail.
Snowy Badman?
Snowy Badman. It's one of Peter Cardwell's cats.
Yeah, he's recorded an album. Also, illegally obtained phones. Why don't you just take the phones off them?
I quite like the guy in the background who looks like he's trying to look like Super Street and Getty, and they pull their collars up over their nose by messing with a pandemic mask.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah.
But it shouldn't take a lot of working out for the prison service to work out exactly who the perpetrators of that were, right? So they could see who they are. I wonder if they did anything about it.
Presumably Snowy is, having recorded his album, is now getting royalties from the album. I thought you weren't supposed... I mean, I know what it's like in Australia, but I mean, you're supposed to not get proceeds from crime, right?
Indeed. What do you think Snowy got banged up for, eh?
Probably something pretty stupid, though.
Yeah, something white, I would imagine.
I would imagine, yeah. OK, Alex, what have you got for us?
Well, I want to continue the trend of the RAYNER villains.
Yes.
And it's Carole Cadwalladr.
Oh, dear.
Because even if you don't remember Carole Cadwalladr, her lies reached mythic levels. That the whole of Brexit was fixed because Aaron Banks was taking Russian money and da-da-da-da-da.
Remember that.
And what's quite hilarious is Aaron Banks went, you can't say this about me. It's not true. As often we Brexiteers have to try and say to Ramona's. And she sort of went, oh, yes, I can, and sort of sneered about how, ha, 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 look what I've done. Everybody gave her a platform, the Hay Literature Festival. She got some sort of journalism award for spinning
she was the
her
darling
web
of the left, wasn't she?
Right, spinning her web of just, fantasy. And Aaron Banks said, well, I'm going to sue you for defamation. And sue her he did and won.
Right.
Of course, you won't find the media reporting this anyway. Remember all that stuff people told you about Brexit? Well, turns out that the person who's peddling it now has to pay out 35 grand in damages and all the legal fees.
Yes, and that could be a lot of money.
Oh,
We'll
it's
come back
over
to that,
$1 million.
because this is what she said when she found out that she was being sued, before she found out she was going to lose.
3 weeks ago, yes, I work, there's an email in my inbox saying that it's a pre-action letter where Aaron Banks, who is this businessman who bankrolled the Leave campaign, Nigel Farage's campaign here, he said that he was going to sue me for defamation over a line in the TED Talk and a line in another talk.
She doesn't look worried, does she?
Oh, but do you know what? She crowdfunded £800,000, right? And when I think of all those hashtag FBP lot who are throwing in their tenors and their 20 quids, and the legal costs alone are over $1 million. So it's almost beautiful,
The
isn't
interesting
it?
thing here is this shows how stupid she is. So the pre-action letter that she was talking about there in her inbox, the pre-action protocol for defamation is that you have then the opportunity to retract what you said and then to
withdraw.
apologise
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe pay the legal fees up to that point.
Yeah, yeah.
She clearly decided not to do that.
Yes.
And then, you know, ran the gauntlet through the legal process, was found wanting, found that she had defamed Aaron Banks, and yeah, has cost £800,000 of
well, it could be more
lefty
than
money.
That. It could be as much as $2 million.
Yeah, more than that. It's definitely.
But she could have been much more responsible and just said, OK, fair enough, I don't want to fight here. Maybe I overstepped a little bit and actually could have dealt with it there and then, but she chose not to.
There was a few beautiful moments where she had to do the grovelling scripted tweet of, I said this and I shouldn't have said it on Twitter. But I think what
She
really
became known
annoys
as Carole
me...
Codswallop, didn't
well,
she?
She is Carole. was Codswallop.
Yeah.
But I think what really bothers me is what she was saying about a democratic event, trying to discredit it. I mean, it has this effect of whipping up this frenzy, like you see in sort of contested elections in African countries. And all the media just went along with it, and it just became like, oh, because Carole says it, it must be true.
It's part
and
of
it's
this
not
thing,
being
Candace,
corrected.
isn't it? It's part of this sort of world in which we now live, where people want to believe somebody because they think they're a good person, so everything they say is automatically OK.
Yes, and I think you've seen this trend now, even with the American elections. People just cannot accept the result as valid. They've always got to claim that there's some conspiracy, that they lost because of a conspiracy. I mean, you look at when Hillary Clinton lost, people were saying that the Russians were hacking into voting machines.
Right.
And that's kind of where it all started, and it's still going on now.
Yeah, it really is quite extraordinary. Now, we're going to do quite a bit more. We haven't got all the way through yet, but coming up very shortly, we're going to look at the Eurovision Song Contest, which I managed to avoid, I have to say, this year, and like most years, and Facebook as well. They're going to be in the firing line. And also, the return of somebody who hasn't been here for a while. You won't be disappointed to find out who it is. This is Plank of the Week. More coming up after this. Welcome back to this week's edition of Plank of the Week. And so far, we've got some pretty good contenders, I have to say. But we have only got a few more to go. And I'm going to go back to Russell Quirk for the next one. And it's that dreaded, ghastly, awful thing they call Eurovision, which, of course, we have to remember took place in Liverpool. After it was awarded to Ukraine, who won it last time around. They obviously couldn't have it in Ukraine because of the war. I don't know why they thought Liverpool was any safer, but sorry. But anyway, the point is they did it in Liverpool. So what happened?
Well, yeah, and you talked about Codswallop before the break, and I think Eurovision absolutely falls into that category. So I want to nominate Eurovision, and not just actually because Mae Muller. So Mae Muller, of course, was the UK candidate, the singer, the star, so-called, I should use big inverted commas there, there she is, who famously, before the event itself, said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but this is pretty much the gist of it, that she hates Britain.
Yeah.
Now, how on earth can you represent Britain when you hate Britain? Right? That just makes absolutely no sense.
We're back to the EU Remainer scenario, aren't we? Doesn't she want a German passport or something, an EU passport?
Well, I guess the clue is in the surname, right?
Yeah.
Muller.
Right.
So she's, you know, we could argue that. But I don't just want to nominate because of Mae Muller. I want to nominate the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Because, look, Eurovision, I know it's got a big following and it gets loads and loads of people watching it, but they're watching it to take the mickey out of it, surely. This is a
I'm not
parody.
sure about that, you know.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Right, listen, I think it's a parody of a proper event. The fact that it seems to be perpetuated by people that can't sing, Euro weirdos and just idiots that look like freaks a lot of the time, frankly. It's not a good spectacle to watch. I don't think it's entertaining. I think it's mad. But here's the real reason that I want to nominate it. Of course, because it's in the UK this year, it cost £24 million. Guess who paid for it? We did.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the taxpayer and the BBC put 10 million quid in of our money. So it's rubbish.
Right.
The person we put forward hates Britain and therefore us, and we paid for the privilege.
Also, famously, is it not the case that whoever wins it actually then goes into sort of cringes of horror for the next 11 months, because they then have to pay for the next one, which never actually works and they never really make any money.
There's no return
at all. So and also, did she not come second last?
Yes, but that's the other point. We never win it. We haven't won it since 1997.
Right.
We never win it. Avril Lavigne or someone like that?
Gina G?
No, it's that the thingy Katrina and the Waves.
Katrina and the Waves, yeah.
Not that I watch Eurovision ever.
So 1997. So usually, you know, even before Brexit, we came last or second but last. But now now. I know we did okay last year. We came second, I think. But generally, we have the mickey taken out of us as a nation every time. So we have to kind of sustain watching it. But yeah, but there are a lot of reasons there, Mike, why I think it's a good nomination for Plank of the Week.
Well, let's have a look at what we have here for you, and then we can see whether you're wrong or whether you're right.
Into my eyes, she's feeling good, she feels alive. I choose how to live my life. I took the wrongs and made it right. Don't let nobody make you forget who you should be. You're powerful, you're all you need. Work it, baby, come with me.
It makes you wonder who came last.
There was somebody worse than that.
Yeah, I think it was a donkey in the corner.
Yeah.
No, she can't
Apparently
even.
it was Germany.
She can't even bloody sing.
That rap.
She can't. She's got no voice.
She can't sing.
I
She
mean,
can't
that
dance.
is drunken karaoke.
Maybe she should write that in prison.
So that little performance there was 24 million quid. Thank you very much.
I mean, that's like a bad Pet Shop Boys tribute act, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
You see in a pub in the middle of Hull somewhere on a Friday night.
But also the other thing for me is that, you know, we had it in Liverpool because we thought that was the right thing to do to help Ukraine out. So it was all about Ukraine. And then Ukraine didn't win.
Yeah.
Surely the point would have been for Ukraine to win.
And of course, Zelensky was supposed to make a speech,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I think would have been hugely important for him to do.
Yeah.
And I guess it was the BBC, was it, that banned him from doing so because it would have been seen as political.
See, that was the thing that surprised me. The BBC went, oh no, that wouldn't be right, because then we'd be making the Eurovision Song Contest political.
But
this is after you've ripped it from Ukraine.
Yeah, but he's the leader of the country that won it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
the BBC again.
Yeah, and brought it to this country. How is that not a political act?
Right.
And also, why is Israel in it?
So has it won, Mike?
No. Australia's in it. Israel's in it.
Yes.
It's the Eurovision Song Contest.
That doesn't make any sense.
Can you help me with either of those questions?
No.
Also, wasn't it right that Kate Middleton, I'd say Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales...
She played the piano at the beginning.
She's not called Kate Middleton, she's called the Princess of Wales. Played the piano at the beginning.
Yeah, as a surprise.
That's not political, is it? Is it?
Well,
They've all
could
gone
argue
quiet.
it is. Yeah.
Anyway, right. What's time now? It's time for Candice, your next one.
Yes.
And it's Facebook, isn't it?
Yes, it's Facebook again for censoring The Spectator again. So in the past week, the editor of The Spectator, Fraser Nelson, said that Facebook wouldn't allow them to publish a column on Facebook written by Douglas Murray.
Yeah.
He's a very well-known political commentator.
Yes.
I mean, pretty mainstream.
The left don't like him.
The left don't like him, but nothing he says, I think, is particularly objectionable. But he wrote an article about this very tragic case in America of a schizophrenic man who was subdued by a bystander on the subway. It was fatal. He killed him. He obviously didn't know what he was doing. And Douglas Murray said, look, you know, this is obviously not good, but this is partly the fault of the public authorities in New York, who are just allowing the situation to get out of hand. Then people who don't know what they're doing try and do something about it, and it results in something like this.
He describes this guy as a sort of have-a-go hero, doesn't
Yes.
he? Because there's a crowded subway train, the schizophrenic in question is homeless. He happens to be black, of course, which is why the story's taken on the hue that it has, because the guy who sort of basically tried to hold him back and control him was white, and he was a veteran. So there's kind of, visions of George Floyd and echoes of that.
Exactly.
So, of course, the left in America have gripped it and said this guy is a racist. The reason this man is dead is because he's black. Yeah. And then they tried to paint him as this really nice character who just liked to do Michael Jackson dances for sort of a bit of money on 42nd Street. It turns out he's been arrested and charged with crimes 48 times. He's punched women in the face. You know, he's threatened to kill people. You know, he's clearly not a well man. And so he was conceivably a danger to the people on the subway.
Clearly. I'm not a great fan of censorship, to be perfectly honest with you, but I find it rather hypocritical that Facebook will not allow an article like that to be published when, of course, so many indecent child images have been traded on that platform over the years.
Well, they seem to be a bit confused about censorship, don't they? Because they only censor things that they think they regard as hate crime. They regarded this piece as hate crime. And there's literally, I've read it as well because it's published by The Spectator, and there's nothing in it which is in any way out of order at all. It's just it's more or less a straight opinion piece on some facts. That's it.
Yes. They said it violates their community standard guidelines on hate speech. Well, what exactly are those? What constitutes hate speech? It seems such a basic question, but Facebook won't answer
But they don't know, they never explain. But
No.
here's, let's have a look at Mark Zuckerberg. He is explaining the ethos behind Facebook in California.
Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out at the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do.
How's that going, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a place where...
Not quite true, is it?
In the early days when me and Peter Hitchens used to do a lot of conversations about COVID at the beginning, and they would put warnings on the stuff that was going onto Facebook, saying things like, you know, some of the points made in this article or in this video may be misleading. And I was going, on a second.
Even though there were
which bit of it is
scientific
misleading exactly?
facts.
You know, we're talking about things which are being debated. We're talking about mask wearing. We're talking about COVID vaccines. We're talking about things which people want to talk about. Which bit is misleading?
Yeah.
And they don't tell you.
Or it might just be opinion. And I think we're still allowed to have opinions,
Yes.
but Facebook maybe see that differently.
Yeah, well, Twitter's... Oh, sorry, Alex, you said what you're going to say. Well, Twitter's gone through this whole transformational process now, and they are very much upholding free speech, but Facebook hasn't. And Facebook is so important to a lot of news organisations.
Yeah.
Business model, it drives a lot of clicks. They've got huge amounts of power, and they need to start be held accountable for that, I think.
I kind of hope that what happens rolling the clock forward, you know, another 5-10 years, is more and more people just go, oh, social media is dreck. I'm not touching it. I mean, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I'm sort of on Instagram, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
I want to delete it. I hate it.
Right.
I use a bit of Twitter because I kind of have to in my role. But I know more and more people who are now going, I don't want this. I want to go to the pub and actually speak to normal people.
Right.
Rather
I mean,
than
it does
get, like,
give you, and it does
dragged
give
into
you
the
a
mire of
very
lunacy.
Old school, Alex.
It does give you a
Love
very
old
skewed
school.
view of the world. You know, you can spend all weekend on
Right.
Twitter and
Doom
think
scrolling.
That, I mean, I remember that I will say this the night of Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority. I remember being on Twitter that evening before I came in to do a kind of overnight show on the election, and genuinely thinking Jeremy Corbyn's won the election.
Yeah.
You know, because it was that ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, there was high turnouts for Labour, high turnouts in London, high turnouts for marginal constituencies. It was always going to be good news for Labour. And of course, it was nothing like that. But on Twitter, you would have thought that was actually the facts of the night, you know?
Yes.
Bizarre. Anyway, coming up, it's nearly the end of the show. I can't believe it. And I've got the next one and the last one, and you're going to like it because you know who it is. It's her. It's her. Not him, not them, her. This is the plank of the week. Right. Welcome back to Plank of the Week, the final furlong. Here we are. This is where we choose the winner, but not until I've given you my final nomination. We've had some pretty good ones, I have to say. I'm liking the look of... I can't see, the trouble is, last 2 weeks I keep giving it to myself. And I know it's not about who's actually nominated them. So I don't want to do that again.
It's like conflict
Justin
of interest
Welby's
there,
quite good, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
I quite like ALASTAIR Campbell as well. But we shall see. Anyway, we are back with a familiar name, and some of you might remember Plank of the Year, 2 years in a row, won by Harry and Meghan, because they just can't be out. We managed to keep Meghan out of it last week because she didn't come to the coronation.
Well, she's kept a low profile, hasn't she?
She's kept a very low profile, but I'm happy to report that this week she's back.
She's popped back
right,
up.
she's back, and they're calling it Meghan 2.0. You know, as they do in these sort of matters. And basically what's going on is that she has relaunched herself, apparently. She launched herself first off with a picture taken candidly while she was in the mountains above Montecito.
She was trekking.
She was trekking around wearing what can only be described as a £17,000 Tiffany watch.
Yeah.
Which, of course, you always wear when you go hiking.
And it was handy that there was a photographer there.
Very handy.
Yeah.
Very handy indeed.
Yeah.
I don't want you to in any way think that that was staged, because clearly
No,
it wasn't.
of course not.
Harry, of course, who came for about 2.5 nanominutes to watch the coronation, then scarper back to America. But a couple of days ago, this week, she accepted a Women of Vision award.
A what?
A Women of Vision award, right?
What, television?
Not television. No, she has been on television, and there she is in a very nice gold dress, which she apparently had changed for the occasion. She's apparently getting it for the lifelong advocacy for women and girls that she's been doing. I mean, let's have a look at what she had to say about what she had won.
You can be the visionary of your own life. You can charter a path in which what you repeat in your daily acts of service, in kindness, in advocacy, in grace, and in fairness.
That's just like one big word
It's
salad.
just great, isn't it?
It's just nothing.
I don't know what it means.
No, it doesn't mean anything.
But she was paraphrasing the Queen.
Yeah, but
right?
aren't we all...
Daily acts of service.
Are we all
What does
in
that even
charge
mean?
of our own vision for ourselves and whatever else she said? I mean, that's kind of what you are as a human being,
She
isn't it?
hasn't shown much grace and honesty and fairness in the way she was accusing the royal family of being racist.
Yeah. Well, that's her vision. Her vision is to destroy the royal family, right? So at least she's got one, I suppose.
I mean, it is
Not a nice
extraordinary that she turned up with Harry. He just kind of holds her hand and smiles benignly at the camera as well. She accepts all these awards. I mean, I don't understand what she's getting awards for.
But wasn't the last award one that they themselves paid for or sponsored or something,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
well, this one is from the Ms. Foundation for Women, and it was their 50th anniversary event, apparently, at the Ziegfeld Ballroom in Manhattan. I presume they took a private jet to go there in the midst of all the advocacy for women and girls. Apparently, it was quite expensive to get a table at these things. So I think they're now forever destined, Harry and Meghan, to just do this tour of these incredibly expensive charity functions where people sit down and pay something like 15 grand.
But they're probably all the same people buying those tickets.
And charging it to their companies, right? And saying that they're doing good works for women and girls.
Yeah.
So what did you do? I went to Meghan Markle's speech.
Strictly for work purposes, I had the huge misfortune to read Harry's book.
Did
right?
you?
Yeah, yeah. And
Bad luck.
And I really...
What did you make of it?
I didn't finish it, right? And in it, I was shocked by the amount of drug taking that he admits to, right? Smoking loads and loads of dope and taking loads of psychedelics.
Yes.
Well, I'm wondering
Bit of coke thrown in.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether he's still on the gear and writing Meghan's speeches, because you can be a visionary. Your own destiny is a sort
Of course, it can be. It's perfectly legal to smoke marijuana in California.
I guess it would
It's not breaking
explain,
any
Pete,
law.
why he married her in the first place, if he was out of his nut on something.
Yeah. I mean, she's already talked about mental health with youngsters in Santa Barbara, and she's been dining out. This apparently now counts as charitable work with people like Gwyneth Paltrow and Cameron Diaz.
Great service.
I mean, service every day.
What,
She just never stops.
Are they homeless now, those
Are
two?
you having the white egg omelette?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the thing in
Selfless.
California when I used to go there was that the thing you have to do in California is you go into a restaurant and make sure you order something that's not on the menu, and then when they bring it to you, you make sure you leave before you've eaten it. Because that's basically what they do. They don't want to eat any food.
No carbs.
But you have to make sure you're ordering something that's not on the menu.
Yeah. Well, you never see donuts in California or bread or anything like that. No such thing anymore.
No, you never do. But I mean, it's so kind of staged. It's almost like their life. We talked, a little bit earlier about Holly and Phil. Their life is just so staged.
Talking about stage, there's one thing that Meghan does every time, and it makes me ill. It really bothers me. When you see pictures of them taken in a candid manner, they're just walking around like normal people. As soon as the camera's taking a pose photo, she does this.
So, looks at Harry.
And looks up at him they literally were on their first date and, banging every
Doe
night.
eyes.
And she's just like...
Yeah.
Selfless
I know.
public service.
Anyway, listen, it's time to pick the winner, because this is, of course, Plank of the Week, and it's all about who wins it. It's all very well being in it. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give it to Alastair Campbell, misogynist of the week, as well as Plank of the Week. There's the bagpipes. There you go. Well done, Alastair. Labour haven't won anything for a while. But there you go, you finally got something. Well done, Alastair Campbell. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks to Peter, thanks to Alex, thanks to Russell, thanks to Candice. We'll see you soon. Coming up next, it's Nadine Dorries, Friday night.
It's time for That Was the Woke That Was.
The topical quiz show that goes through all of the wokest stories of the week.
She has been fame hungry from the get-go.
Saturdays at 9 on TalkTV.